Do we ever talk to anyone after they die? To test this, early 19th century scientists performed some experiments on corpses that would make anyone's heart tremble. Place the clip on the vein. This is not a living dog, but a dead dog. The part that was cut has been connected to a machine that can move the heart and lungs. Now look at this scene carefully. Just like when scientists attach electrodes to the dead person's head, he immediately starts licking it. But this was not a complete response of consciousness in that dead dog. When a light is shined into its eyes or the table is knocked with a loud sound, it still responds to those stimuli. The real proof is that the dog was not alive biologically, but whatever was happening around it, it was still conscious of it. But the main question is, how does the eye see? In addition to the brain, heart, and lungs, the proper functioning of all other organs is essential for survival. So after seeing the surface blood and oxygen, how did the doctors finally declare the person dead? And has anyone ever tried such an experiment on humans as well? So what finally happened to them after all this? Well, today we will learn in detail about these scientific experiments on the revival of the dead. Unfortunately, cases like this are still common in our society. Just a few days ago, there was a murder of a girl in the People area of Bangalore. Sometimes, even in broad daylight, a murder occurs, while onlookers are confused about whether to intervene, and some simply choose not to act. People intervene when they feel safe doing so, but sometimes taking action is seen as dangerous. When such incidents happen in broad daylight, it is almost impossible for a person to be present at the exact same time, to save the victim's life and to identify him either before or after death. That's a good question. You likely have questions about this too. And with that, today through this video, you will also learn some very important life-saving skills, which can be very useful for you in emergency situations. So the fear of death is ultimately the ultimate fear for any human being. And interestingly, after killing a human, the instruments used also showed signs of fear, in which scientists performed tests. And today, in the context of human and animal rights, at that time, no one could even imagine performing such experiments. So if we talk about the era before today, there was a time when scientists did not think twice before performing such cruel experiments. All this is mainly seen between the years 1914 to 1923, which is considered the darkest period in the history of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or Russia. So much so that even today, this period is referred to as the reign of death in Russia. During these 9 to 10 years, the situation in the Soviet Union was so bad that people who were already struggling to survive found it even harder to live, and millions of people lost their lives. First of all, in 1914, their western border was attacked by Austria-Hungary and Serbia, which is considered the beginning of World War I. As a result, Russia also got involved in this war, and for the next 3 million soldiers die, but even after that, the situation remains just as bad. After that, from 1918 to 1921, a civil war breaks out in the country, which leads to mass migrations, famine spreads, and again, around 10 million people die due to disease and hunger. And after all this, when things finally start to settle down and it seems like there might be peace in the country, suddenly in the year 1921, a famine breaks out again and millions more people die. All in all, it is said that in this sequence of events from 1914 to 1923, almost 20 million Russians lost their lives. So, after seeing all these corpses and these deaths, how can anyone feel proud? So, on those days when there wasn't a Soviet government, he established a new economic policy in the country. Because of this, people started feeling relieved and they began to move on with their lives day by day, forgetting their trauma. Except for one group, Soviet scientists. After coming so close to death, Soviet scientists became obsessed with death, like literally from the early 1920s. Just look at the titles of the books, brochures, pamphlets, or even articles they published. Life and death. What is death? Death from the point of view of modern science. Aging and death, the problems of death and immortality, death and revival, the enigma of death, and so on. Believe it or not, in 1924, renowned pathologist George Shore did just that. So the suggestion was that a separate special field should be created in science that deals with life and death. And based on the name of the Greek god of death, Thanatos, they also named this scientific field accordingly. Thanatology, as you can see, was desperately trying to understand death. So, brother, in proper medical terms, what exactly is death? Because you see, science is all about fundamentals, right? Once the fundamentals are clear, technology can be built on top of that. And in this era, there were two scientists like this who were determined to know everything about the heart. One of them was determined to find out the secrets of the human body. The first name was Soviet scientist Sergei Bryukhonenko, and the second name was American scientist Robert Cornish. Now, specifically talking about Robert Cornish, even today people call him a mad scientist. Because at that time, with the help of a giant seesaw, he was trying to revive the dead. So Cornish would take a human body, tie it to a large seesaw that could move like a swing, and then inject chemicals like adrenaline and heparin to try to restart the blood flow and revive the person. He would then move the body up and down on the seesaw to try to circulate the blood throughout the body. That's what he used to do. His idea was that when oxygen and nutrients reach the brain, the blood will start flowing again, and from there the whole body will begin to circulate blood. That's how the dead can be brought back to life. So now the million-dollar question, did those dead bodies really come back to life? Well, as you can imagine, not a single corpse got up because of his method. In Leakin Cornish's experiments, the mistake was only with the corpses. No, I am serious. Cornish believed the people had been dead for too long, which is why his method didn't work on them. But if this experiment is done on freshly dead humans, then it might work. So Cornish then performed the same experiment on freshly dead dogs, which were named Lazarus 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, respectively. Out of these, the first three, as expected, showed very little improvement and died again soon after. It seemed that they had died, but surprisingly, the last two came back to life again. Which means, who knows, maybe they weren't dead after all. And what is the science behind this? We will talk about that next. Because this experiment will definitely seem quite silly to you by today's modern science understanding. But did Cornish really manage to crack any code to revive a dead body during his experiments or not? To answer these questions, we must shift our focus from the United States of America to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. This is where Soviet scientist Sergei Bryukhonenko also comes in. I am going to the extreme to find the answer. But unlike Lake Cornish, his method was more scientific than today's standard. So much so that today, in modern open-heart surgery, patients are kept alive. The artificial life support system that is used, it is believed that it was inspired by them. In the year 18 September 1925, Sergei Bryukhonen was given a coffee interesting opportunity. When he attended a big medical professionals conference in Russia, he presented a device called AUTOJECTOR, which could mimic the functions of our heart and lungs. It had two basic electric pumps, which were connected to the main veins of the neck through rubber tubes. And on the other side, these two pumps were connected to an oxygenation vessel where oxygen was added to the blood. Basically, through this device, Bryukhonenko's idea was that one pump would draw deoxygenated blood from the vein into the oxygenation vessel, and then after oxygen was added there, the second pump would send it back. Oxygenated blood will be injected back into the body, potentially reviving a dead body, in theory. If you've ever witnessed a real-life human decapitation, you know it's not easy. This was a live demo of the same thing, which Bryukhonenko publicly showed. And this was proof that Bryukhonenko's method actually worked, and Cornish was very impressed, but unfortunately. He revived the decapitated dogs, but that revival and life lasted only for about an hour, after which the dogs died again. So Bryukhonenko realized that he would have to make his technique even more perfect and provide more solid proof. And that's why in this you will know what his next demonstration was. Well, at this point he took a closed box, cut a small hole in its side, and placed his entire hand inside to show the box was empty, so nothing could come out. Then after 10 minutes he weighed it to make sure there was no doubt that it was dead. And then finally, after 10 minutes of death, he attached the flesh to an auto-injector, attempting to revive it. And then look at these footage. This is the same dog on which the experiment was done. Now look carefully. It is moving its legs slowly, as if it was never dead, which means he revived the patient from literal death. Now obviously after this success, finally you'll ask, did Bryukhonenko ever try this on humans? Well, I searched a lot in academic records, but personally I couldn't find any documented proof of this. But one thing became absolutely clear from this experiment, that if blood and oxygen are supplied to any dead body within 10 minutes of the time of death, then life can be brought back to it. But just think, if after 10 minutes a dog is kept dead, then why can't it be done with humans? In the movie, the doctors mention that only 10 minutes are permitted, which you likely noticed as well. If the patient was brought sooner, his life could have been saved. Plus, you must have also seen many times that someone is dying in front of you. And if a straight line appears on the echocardiograph monitor, the doctor immediately gives an injection of Nicale to the patient. And then after that, by giving a shock, they try to bring the victim back to life. So is that the final limit? After crossing such a big limit, no one has ever been brought back to life after death by any means. So please explain the reason behind this question. First, we need to understand the process of death itself. Death is not a single event, but rather a process. The body passes through several stages. First, if someone's consciousness goes away in a moment, they become unconscious. But at the time of death, every body goes through that process when a person dies. If someone suddenly falls unconscious for a specific reason, their body undergoes 4 main stages, starting with shock. Whether it's an accident, a fall from a height, someone is shot, or even if someone is killed by hitting with a stick. In all these cases, this kind of trauma happens. If the significant blood loss happens, this is the stage where blood flow is severely restricted due to hanging. If the organ damage happens, then sometimes the body goes into shock due to the injury. In this state, the body tries to protect itself. No matter how hard the heart, lungs, and brain try, these vital organs can't keep supplying blood and oxygen. During this, pulse and blood pressure may drop, hands and feet may feel cold, and vital organs like the brain, heart, and lungs may lack sufficient blood supply because the blood there is diverted. Now, this is a very crucial stage because at this stage, if you control the bleeding in any way, cover the bleeding spot with a thick towel, apply pressure, then you can delay the victim's death by several hours and save them. If you see any accidental victim bleeding, always try to stop the blood loss first in any situation. Large wounds can cause severe bleeding, rapidly deteriorating the victim's condition as blood continuously leaks from the entire wound area. So what will happen then? When substantial bleeding occurs, the victim enters the second stage known as hypovolemic shock. In this stage, there is insufficient blood remaining in the body to sustain life. Because due to the lack of proper pressure, organs start to fail, and that's why organs stop getting oxygen. In this situation, the victim first feels weak and confused, then becomes unconscious. His breathing becomes very fast, and then finally he becomes unconscious. Now, after this stage, the person cannot be saved from death without immediate help. And at this level, most of the accident victims also die. But in reality, it is very rare for this to happen. If we go ahead with just one thing, we will talk about it in detail later. Okay? In this case, it is only in infants with severe cystic fibrosis or medical facility that it is necessary to supply external extra blood and oxygen. If this happens, the patient may need to be kept on a ventilator for some time and may need to be given medication. And if the critical condition improves, then it is not necessary to keep the patient on all these organs, external blood, and oxygen for a long time. And in such cases, the patient will die in the third stage, which is called clinical death. This is what basically happens. After excessive blood loss, the heart stops, breathing ceases, and the pulse is no longer felt. And even the monitor starts showing a straight line. And this stage is technically called clinical death when the heart stops beating. Now, in Bryukhonenko's experiment, when the rabbits were brought back to life after 10 minutes, they were actually being brought back from this type of death. In this stage, in most cases, the doctor usually has about 10 minutes to restart the heartbeat. But if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, the patient dies. Biological or brain death occurs when oxygen deprivation to the brain for a few minutes causes irreversible damage. Due to the death of the brain and other organs, the cells of these organs start to die and we lose control over our body and organs. And that's why you will see this. At this stage, the victim's eyes become fixed on one spot and the pupils of the eyes dilate, which means they become spread out. That is the final stage. After that, nothing can be done. According to the brain's millions of self-literal circuits, they cannot be revived by any medical procedure. At that moment, the glass with the broken edge hit the same structure. Nothing could be done. Well, sometimes it also happens that after giving clinical death, the patient is revived and the patient comes back to life. But sometimes it happens that the cells in his brain die, and because of this, either the patient goes into a partial coma or is left in a vegetative state for life. I mean, just think about it. His heart is just working, he's breathing, and maybe that's all his body is able to do now. His brain is damaged with dead brain cells, resulting in a complete loss of knowledge. He can't see anything, he can't hear anything, and he can't feel anything. Bilkul jinda lash beating with a heart. Take the case of Jesse Cardia's rest patient. The heart was beating completely differently from the rest of the body. Yanikai Clinical died clinically but was revived after 45 minutes. So here, even after limiting it to 10 minutes, he was revived after 45 minutes by giving a far exceed. Dr. Sam Parnia, who is the main director of revival research at Stony Brook University in New York. According to him, Carol is not the only one with such an experience. There are many such patients who have been revived even after being declared dead for a few hours. Basically, even after death, there is a technique used to bring someone back to life called defibrillation. In this, the electric current given instantly makes the heart start beating again by stimulating its natural rhythm. This is called giving a shock to try to bring someone back to life. You must have seen this being done in movies as well. In this, basically a defibrillator machine is used whose two pads are placed on the chest region in a specific position, and then a current is released to the body. Ideally, in the first shock itself, the patient's heart should restart and start beating normally along with the normal heartbeat. But if that doesn't happen, then 2 or more attempts are made. Epinephrine or vasopressin, agents that constrict blood vessels, are also given to raise blood pressure, so that the muscles of the heart and the rest of the body get oxygen and they can start functioning normally again. Now, if the heart still doesn't start, then the patient will be given cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Otherwise, due to the lack of oxygen, the chances of brain damage increase drastically. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation is a procedure in which the patient's chest is pressed repeatedly to manually pump blood from the heart. You are watching this video in which you will also see this basic sign in the explanation. In the coffee detail, Coffee will tell you about this video in the same way. Link has been provided in the description below. It is important for everyone, including technicians, to know about it. In emergencies like heart attacks, drowning, or cardiac arrest, cardiopulmonary resuscitation is a critical life-saving procedure. Even after 45 minutes, life can still be saved. Anyway, now that we've talked about all this, let's see how exactly the heart works and how this world is created. As you know, on the Get Set Fly Science channel, we aim to bring personal and social empowerment through science, and we want to make this clear without a doubt. That science is not just a subject but a way of thinking. It's a logical mindset that provides a shortcut to understanding the world. When something unexpected happens to us or we get injured in a fight, then in the end we want to take the quickest possible route to the hospital. In such situations, we are unsure whether to rush the patient to the hospital or wait for the ambulance. So what would be the right thing to do here? So for this, you will have very little time to decide how much time it will take for the ambulance to reach the victim. The concept, called trauma distribution and trauma dates, is not specific to the medical field. In this, you have to quickly assess the patient's condition, how much time they have left, and make a decision based on that. The first category here is immediate deaths. Here, the person dies within a few seconds to a few minutes. How can this be identified? Severe brain or spinal cord injury from direct or indirect impact or major blood vessel rupture can cause immediate death. So in such cases, the victim survives only for a few minutes, and most of the time in these cases, there is no chance that the patient will reach the hospital alive. Now, there are also some cases in which immediate death can occur, which you can see on the screen. They are mentioned. Now, the second category is of early deaths, that is, those victims who die within a few minutes to a few hours. In this category, there are people who get injured due to abdominal region or chest injuries, or if there is a major lung injury from a bullet or similar object, or if there is moderate bleeding. Let's see. There are other cases you can see on the screen. In these cases, with adequate first aid help, a victim can be saved in a very short time. Before dying, what is said is not about pain. First, the body becomes cold and numb. At that time, the only thing that can tell the condition of the victim is the latest data, which is the third and final category of data, and that is the late data. In this stage, the data of the dead body is often rare, and sometimes the body is found many days or even weeks after the incident. I got it. If the injury site gets infected or remains unnoticed, then later on, due to complications, the patient's death can occur. Now, is it possible that most of the patients die from this wound, and how can they be saved? In India, the situation is even worse. Statistics show that today, 50% of the cases, accident death figures show that most of the time, victims do not get the right medical care in the golden hour. And do you know the reason for this? Well, recently, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and National Institution for Transforming India (AYOG) together conducted a survey of emergency medical services across the country. So it was found that in almost 90% of rural ambulances in India, there aren't even proper medical equipments. 95% of ambulances are operated by untrained staff, and 98.5% of ambulances don't take patients to the proper hospital with appropriate care. Now, in developed countries, the ambulances have trained medical staff present, and at the same time, all the necessary medical amenities are also available. Because of this help, the staff can immediately start the victim's blood circulation again, and until the hospital is reached, they can also supply oxygen, masks, and even artificial oxygen if needed. In this golden hour, everything is very important and crucial, with which the clinical death can be delayed as much as possible, and the chances of saving the patient increase a lot. Read it carefully. In India, this facility is unavailable in most areas, and many people are unaware of this option. And in Indian cities, traffic is so much that even reaching the hospital on time can cost you a lot of time. This literally means that it will be like walking in a big city with the knowledge of a patient. And all this can be so avoidable. In critical situations, always opt for advanced life support ambulances, which are already equipped with all the necessary life support facilities. In this video, I will also perform an appeal. Always take data from medical and governmental authorities only. It is absolutely clear that due to the lack of proper ambulance facilities, 98.5% of medical emergency ambulances are only able to take the patient up to the hospital. Here we need a lot of advancement and improvement. Finally, friends, you may never need this information, but if there is ever an accident, please take action as quickly as possible. Don't wait for others to help. You must have heard about this before, that the golden hour is very important for any victim. If you feel that the ambulance is taking time to arrive and the hospital is nearby, then you can take the injured person to the hospital directly in your own vehicle. Every minute is extremely important here. Sometimes it can be a matter of life and death for a person. With that said, thank you. Subscribe to the Science channel to watch more videos like this. I am your host, Mainhun, and through science, we aim to improve both individuals and society. Only through everyone's awareness can this be possible. Remember, science is more than just a subject. Rather, it is a way of looking at the world, a way of understanding the world,